Go ahead. So Zoom, sorry, we're laughing, guys. Welcome back to Thyroid and Healing Podcast. I don't know if you guys have been on Zoom lately, but it has this very creepy voice. When you start recording, it says, this meeting is being recorded. So we were laughing about that.
Yeah.
So this is episode 61.
61 already. Yeah, welcome back. So today I thought we would talk about the thyroid and the adrenal connection. Okay. So we've talked a lot about adrenals and stress and how that stress loop affects our physiology and affects our health. But I wanted to talk about the relationship with thyroid because oftentimes we're familiar with symptoms of a thyroid issue, right? So a lot of people will come in and think that they have a thyroid problem if they have trouble losing weight, or they're losing hair, or they have dry skin, or sometimes, even if they gain weight or they don't have any energy and they're feeling fatigued. The first thing that the medical world has taught us is to look at thyroid. So people will come in and say, I think my thyroid is low. I'd like to test it. It's like, okay, we can definitely do that. But knowing how well our thyroid is functioning, if it's a hypo or a low functioning thyroid, or a hyper and a high functioning thyroid, tells us there's dysfunction in that gland, but it doesn't tell us why, right? What's that root cause? So a lot of folks have heard of Hashimoto's. Hashimoto's is a hypo or low functioning thyroid with an autoimmune component. Okay. So that means the body is creating immune cells that's attacking the thyroid, and that's what's causing the low energy, the hair loss, the skin changes, right? It can even affect our triglycerides, our cholesterol. It can cause swelling and edema in folks. It can cause depression and anxiety when our thyroid is low functioning or hypo. Now you can have hypothyroid without Hashimoto's, just your thyroid's dysfunctional for whatever reason, and it not be an autoimmune problem causing it.
Okay.
So,
I mean, I get you. I'm following you, but I'm trying to think with my non-doctor brain, like, well, if it's Hashimoto's and thyroid, isn't it two different things? One's a gut health thing that led to a thyroid thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
So that's why when I test for people's thyroid and we identify, or if they come to me with that diagnosis of like, hey, I have a hypothyroid, I'm on medication. It's like, okay, I want to figure out why. What's that root cause?
Yeah.
If it's Hashimoto's or an autoimmune, we've got to address the gut health.
Yep.
You're exactly right. Now, if it's not autoimmune, there are still things we have to investigate further to figure out why your thyroid is not functioning correctly.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. What's making that low functioning component or that hypothyroid picture? And so because hypothyroidism is growing in the US, especially among women, I think it's an important topic to talk about, especially to help people understand what is getting in the way of our thyroid function. So inflammation is usually at the top of the list. And that's can be related to the autoimmune, or it may not be related to autoimmune. Okay.
Right.
The second at the top of the list is adrenals and our stress. And so I wanted to bring this up because we talk about stress a lot, but so we know that there's a relationship between the thyroid and the adrenals. Okay. In the pathway for adrenals, it's called an HPA axis.
Okay.
In the thyroid, it's called an HPT axis.
Okay.
The H is the hypothalamus and the P is the pituitary.
Okay.
Those are both in our brain.
Okay. Yep.
And then the T is our thyroid for the thyroid side, and the A is the adrenals for the glands on top of our kidneys.
Okay.
So the first two components of those pathways, though they're separate, the hypothalamus and pituitary are involved in both.
Okay.
Right. So it would make sense that the thyroid production, hormone production, and the cortisol, the adrenal hormone production would be linked. Okay. Right. Because they both have the hypothalamus and pituitary.
Okay. Yeah.
So what normally happens in the thyroid, that HPT axis, is that our body gets signals in the hypothalamus in our brain, and it goes to the pituitary, and the pituitary says, hey, I'm going to produce TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. That goes to our thyroid, tells our thyroid, hey, we need to produce thyroid hormone, which is T4. We take T4 and it goes into the cells or the periphery and it converts it to T3. T3 is the most active form. I know. Okay, follow me here. So T3 is the most active form.
Okay.
That is what is responsible for our bone health, our brain health, and our metabolism.
Okay.
So if it affects our bone health, that reduces our risk for osteoporosis or other bone fractures.
Yep.
If it affects our brain health, that helps with the mood, the depression, the anxiety, the brain fog, the memory. And if it helps with metabolism, that helps with the energy. That's what helps with our weight loss.
Okay.
That's the thyroid. Okay. So parallel to that, the HPA axis is the hypothalamus sends signals to the pituitary in our brain. Then it sends signals to the adrenals. Then the adrenals release, it sends another signal and to the specific part of our adrenals, and that releases cortisol. Now, the trick is the more stress that we perceive around us triggers that hypothalamus and the pituitary to create that first signal to the adrenals. It's called CRH, cortical releasing hormone. The more CRH that's present will actually suppress the thyroid.
Okay, because we need all the energy to go to the adrenals to produce more cortisol.
Exactly. Because your body's like, hey, I perceived a threat.
Right.
So the more signaling hormones from the pituitary to the adrenals, that's CRH. And then, of course, it goes to the adrenals and it makes more cortisol. Well, cortisol actually inhibits the thyroid that thyroid cascade in two places. It inhibits the TSH and it inhibits the conversion of T4 to T3, to the active form.
Because it wouldn't be necessary to metabolize food. It wouldn't be necessary to think clearly. It wouldn't be necessary to, what's the other one?
Bones, make your bones stronger.
We're not making bones because we're literally running from a lion right now.
Exactly. Yeah. So your body's in survival mode. So it tells the thyroid, hey, we're going to turn off this component and we're going to focus on making that cortisol so that we can get out of the situation and be safe. Right. So we can see that relationship. The trouble is when, or the challenge comes when we're under that chronic stress. Right. When that stress is days, weeks, years, decades, a lifetime for some folks. And they wonder why their thyroid's not functioning. And so we're going to the root cause, right? If your thyroid's not functioning, your labs are coming back crummy, you're on medication, that medication may or may not be helping. We got to look at that root cause. What's influencing the thyroid?
Thoughts.
Exactly. Our stress and our thoughts and our feelings are perpetuating that. So the I get this a lot too, so that's why I want to bring it up, because in thyroid, if people get diagnosed with a hypothyroid picture, they've been prescribed medication. You're on a synthetic, you're on Synthroid, you're on levothyroxine, even if you're on a natural desiccated thyroid, there's the access isn't as easy for folks, but they do have Armour or like Westhroid or NP-Throid, and they're supposed to be, they're natural desiccated thyroid hormones. But if the prescriptions are actually a T4, so your body still has to convert that to T3. And even the desiccated hormones has a combination of T4 and T3, but the majority is T4.
If you're in survival mode, your body's not going to spend the energy then to convert T4 to T3, even if it is synthetic, because it's just an unnecessary use of energy.
Exactly. So then people still feel crummy, right? You're still fatigued, you're still tired. And so you go to your doctor.
paying for expensive pee at that point.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then you go into the doctor and you're like, hey, I still feel like I don't have any energy. I'm still losing hair. I'm still, you know, can't lose weight. So the doctor increases your prescription. So you're going up, right?
From your body's like, great, I'm just gonna urinate more tea for it.
Yeah, because it's because that conversion is not happening because of the increased cortisol.
Yep. Yeah.
So when folks are on a thyroid medication, I always ask, how's it working for you? Right? Like, let's slow down and see if it's really working.
Yeah.
Right? What's improved since you started taking it? Oh, nothing's improved. Okay, we need to get to the root cause. It's not just your thyroid is not functioning, but why is your thyroid not functioning? Or why are you not converting this medication to the active form, right? So then you can get the benefits of what your thyroid, of what the active thyroid hormone would be doing in your body.
Okay. So can I like insert in a little brain thing? Awesome. I was teaching this, and Dr. Carmen and I have a program now, and it's a 12-week program. And in the program, our members get a video every Sunday over different topics that just we think are very important. And so I was doing the video over how the brain works. So this is really fresh on the mind. And so I described the older part of our brain, the primal part of our brain, right? Which was there thousands and thousands of years ago, right? And that's when the brain, that part of the brain shined, right? It's back when we lived out in nature, right? With lots of predators and threats, right? The weather was a threat, animals were a threat, other tribes were threats, right? Feasts and famines were threats. Like we were constantly, like the survival was predominantly needed for our primal brain to shine. And that primal brain has three main tasks: seek pleasure, avoid pain, and utilize as little energy as possible.
Exactly.
Right? It was great back then. Now, so you imagine back then, take yourself into this like primal person, right? And like, if I have to, I'm not going to want to leave my cave, right? Because it's scary out there. There's lions, there's tigers, there's other tribes, but I have to eat. So if I leave this cave and I go eat food, it hits the pleasure receptors in my brain, right? And then pleasure is like, oh, I want to do this again.
Right.
And so we had to have that, so then it would make me go and get food.
Yes.
Right. Well, we live in such an abundant society now. We don't have lions or tigers, but that part of our primal brain has not evolved. It's still in 180 or BC, right? Like it hasn't really evolved to match today's society, today's technology.
Okay.
Right?
I'm following you.
Okay. And so when it perceives a threat, the brain can't distinct whether the threat is a tiger or whether the threat is your boss. Right?
Yes.
A threat is a threat, whether it's a physical threat or an emotional threat. The brain cannot distinct between the two. Emotional pain, physical pain, same thing to the brain. Right. Both of them say you're approaching imminent death. Okay. And so it sounds like that's what you're describing. It's like when we are in a place of stress, the body's meant to do well with stress. Lion chases me, right? A lion comes out from nowhere. I'm trying to pick me an apple. It comes out from nowhere. I take off running. My adrenals shot up. All that T4, T3 is now shut off because it's all about take all the energy stores and go to run and move this body as fast as possible.
Right. You're in survival. Yeah. You're going to survive this.
I run away. I get away from the lion, right? I'm alive. I celebrate that. I shake it off. I go back to getting my apple and go back to the cave, right? That's what it's meant to do.
Exactly.
But we live in a society now where 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, stress, perceived threats, right? Bills come in, perceived threat. Spousal relationships sometimes are perceived threats, right? Kids, the stress that kids bring, perceived threats. And you're never able to run away from the tiger, celebrate living, shake it off. You're just constantly running away from the tiger. So the body says, okay, we're running this marathon. This tiger just keeps tailing us.
It's coming.
We're only going to spend energy chemicals, hormones that help us survive, because survival is primary, thriving and healing is secondary.
Right. Exactly.
There's my soapbox.
That was beautifully described. That's it. Is that when we have that perceived stress, our body is adapted to survive.
Yeah. It's going to survive first.
Exactly.
Survival of the organism.
Yes. And we see this in the animal kingdom, right? Where some people argue human beings are animals too.
We are.
But we weren't any different, right? In that regard of, hey, if there's a perceived threat, our body at almost I would say all costs, it's going to try and survive where it can.
Yes.
Yeah. And you're exactly right. I love how you put it, that the secondary is thriving, right? Yeah. So we have to complete that circle and be in that calming, safe, right state after that stressor, or after we've processed that stressor, in order to be thriving. So in order for your thyroid to be functioning 100%. So it when we just look at the thyroid and we don't look at it within the person and within the whole context, I believe that medicine's not doing a very good job at serving people.
No, I agree with
you. Because I mean, you can take thyroid medication all day long. You can continue to go up and dose. Yeah. Month after month, get those labs every month, every 3 months. But if you don't get to the root cause, it's not going to change.
Yeah. I mean, that could be said to a lot of things. Like my experiences with like antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. You can put me on that, but unless I change my shitty beliefs or thoughts, I'm going to have to be on that for life.
Definitely.
Because I'm feeding it this negative thought loop, negative beliefs that physiologically impact me.
Yes. Yeah. I will have, occasionally I have folks come in and say, oh, you know what? I'm healthy. Everything's doing great. All I have is just this one thyroid medicine. I was like, oh, okay. Well, that's great that you only have one medicine, but the thyroid is usually that tip of the iceberg. There's something more, right? And so if you're willing to go and dig a little bit deeper and figure out what that root cause, then you can actually promote the production of appropriate amounts of thyroid hormone where you don't have to be on medication.
Right.
The trick is long-term thyroid medication use, because there's a feedback loop there. So your body can become dependent on that thyroid hormone prescription. So that levothyroxine, that Synthroid, if you're constantly going up and up in prescription, it comes to a point where your body says, hey, I don't need to make as much thyroid because I'm already getting it. It's in my bloodstream, right? So even though that's what we call an exogenous or an outside hormone, we're not promoting the thyroid to do its job and produce the thyroid hormone. Right. So there's that when I'm working with folks and trying to optimize the thyroid, there is that period where you have to figure out, okay, how long have you been taking thyroid hormone, and where in that pathway can we support you the most to help with the conversion, address the stress, but also to produce adequate amounts, or to reset your thyroid, if you will, because it may have become dependent on that prescription.
That would make sense. Like if you're feeding it T4 all the time, like body's going to conserve energy. So like why, if I can delegate that task out to something else, then why would I spend the energy of doing it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. I think it's important to understand, that relationship, just because more and more people, and women especially, are looking for an answer, right? They're looking for an answer. And because thyroid gets a lot of media and a lot of press, that's why people will go in and say, oh, will you please test my thyroid hormones? Is this a thyroid problem? And it may be, but that may just be the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. Anything else?
I think that hopefully that explains
That's
it all
enough for you guys. Awesome. Well, we will see you guys next week.